After this, you will never joke with payment of tithe, I tell you.
Now the question is, what is even tithe? Tithe means 1/10. In Leviticus chapter 27 verse 32, it talks about the 10th of their harvest. And 10th here in Hebrew means Masa, which means a test. God said, test me and see if I'll not open the floodgates, the windows of blessings upon you. If you go to the verse 30 of Leviticus chapter 27, it says that a tithe of everything from the land, whether grain from the soil or fruit from the trees, belongs to the Lord. It is holy to the Lord. So this was an ordinance God gave to the children of Israel through Moses. Even today, the Hebrew rabbis who have studied the Torah for about 300 years will let you know that in the Talmud, it explained that payment of tithes open windows of blessings upon the individual. And the Jews still practices even up to today. They understand this secret covenant ordinance that open doors of blessings. Now, let's get the whole picture and understand why we did not hear much about payment of tithe in the days of the New Testament from Jesus Christ to the era of the apostles. Now, this is what happened when the children of Israel, they returned from captivity from Babylon with a lot of possessions. And what did they do? Instead of paying tithe from those possessions, they refused to pay tithes. And after doing that, their economy started running down. And when they even prayed to God, no answer. And that's where they cried to God and asked God why our economy is running down. When we even pray, you don't hear. This now explains Malachi chapter 3, verse 8 to 11. And God now asks them, will a man rob God? But you have robbed me in the payment of your tithe. God now said, test me and see. That's Masa. If I will not open the windows of heaven and bless you. And in reality, even today, that obedience of the payment of tithe from Abraham, it is that blessing that we are still enjoying even today because of that obedience of payment of tithe to Melchizedek. Remember, Melchizedek was the first high priest we heard of in the Bible in Genesis chapter 14 verse 18, where I even have a video where I explain that Melchizedek's appearance in Genesis chapter 14 verse 18 was Jesus Christ, who came in the world in a human form in the book of Genesis. So Abraham paid his tithe to Jesus Christ, who was the high priest. And this was what opened doors of blessings to him. One might ask, why is it that we did not hear about Christ paying tithe? So the issue is that Christ already gave us the bread and then the wine. And that was what even happened in Genesis chapter 14 verse 18. He gave wine and bread to Abraham. And in the New Testament, he came and repeated the same thing. So now let's see the whole thing about how come that we did not hear much about payment of tithe in the New Testament, even though Christ mentioned about it in Matthew chapter 23 verse 23. What happened is that in the Council of Nicaea, the early churches, the bishops came together, had a meeting, and they agreed that payment of tithe was a necessary practice that opened the windows of blessings upon the individual. So it was practiced. This happened until in the Council of the Trent, that was in 1545 to 1663, and where they met again and decided that the issue of tithe was not necessarily a ticket to heaven. And by this, they ignored it. And what happened again? Their economy started collapsing. And they revisited the payment of tithe. So payment of tithe was happening until the Romans invaded Jerusalem. And that is where they stopped the Jews from paying tithe. Why? Because they noticed that the payment of tithe as a practice was given to God. And this money, the Roman government needed that money. In fact, in those days, it was called bikurim. That's the first fruit of whatever you have. You bring it to the priest, that is to God. So the Romans saw that all these things were going to the house of God. So in order to divert everything back to them, they made it a law that all bikurims, it should be given to the authorities, the Roman authorities. And they made it a law punishable. Whoever is caught paying your bikurim, sending it to the temple, it was punishable by law. So that happened even when Christ came. That law was a practice. They were paying their bikurims to the Roman government. Probably people might not know. You might have heard about King Herod stabbing and killing James in the Bible. And a lot of people might not know that the reason why James was killed was that James spoke against the payment of the bikurim, that's the tenth, to the Roman government. And that made King Herod angry. And then he stabbed James. You see. But even though the Roman government, they stopped it, what happened is that the Jews underground, they were still hiding and paying tithe. So that issue, the payment of tithe, is an Old Testament thing. If you think it's an Old Testament thing, then go and throw away the Old Testament Bible. You see, it's something we still practice. If you don't pay tithe, how do you get blessed? Even this thing, the traditionalists, they understand it. They pay first fruits. In the spiritual realms, it is a law. So payment of tithe is in the Bible. It's a biblical ordinance. The issue is that if you do not pay tithe, it wouldn't stop you from going to heaven. But just that the blessings of God and its protection, you are going to miss out. You see, the Romans changed a lot of things when they invaded Jerusalem. They changed the Jews' currency, that was the shekels. They changed it to the drachma and then the denarii and then the Syrian shekels. You cannot buy anything with the shekels unless you change it into drachma or denarii. So this was what they were doing at the temple. And they gave the rate so high that it was just like robbing the Jews before you can change your shekels into drachma or denarii. It was this event that happened that Christ went into the temple and chased them out and called them thieves and robbers. You see, so there are a lot of things that the Romans actually, even our dating system, the calendar, they change it.
Thank you for visiting the Seeking the Light 300 channel. Subscribe for more.